am.
This is Robin Dreeke, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah, it's man, I love talking to you. We always have the best conversations. You've written a new book called Unbreakable Alliances, and I read it, and it's just fantastic. And it reminds you, we oftentimes underestimate the challenge of leadership. We think it's something where like you just lead, you're born leader. But okay, maybe there's born leaders, but man,
What a funny statement, born leader.
I know, right? Developed leaders, though, they're different. They're trained. They've been through, and they understand how to balance all the teeter-totters you have to balance to be a leader.
Yeah, it's a life journey. You know, part of the humility of, and it's a humility of being a master. And a master is not someone who has it all down. A master is someone who recognizes I have a long journey, and I fell in love with the process. It takes a long time to fall in love with the process because the process can be very painful and it can suck on days, but as reminded to me in another book I recently read, we don't remember the average days. We only remember days that are really awesome or really suck, because they make a great life rep. And so go out and make a day that you're going to remember and make it a great rep and just enjoy the journey in the process.
I've said this to you before, but this is more for the audience as they consume the show. I found you, my special someone. I said, I need to write a book on trust because I leaned so hard on trust when I was in combat doing spy things.
Yes, you do.
And I didn't. I was like, and I started to codify it. Legitimately was using that word. And she's like, oh, I saw a book about that called The Code of Trust. And I was like, wait, what? Someone already ripped them. And so at first, I got scooped, and I don't mind. Then I went and I got the book, and I'm like, oh man, every step of the way. And this is a credit, obviously, to what I've done, but to what you've done too. Like, I am the ultimate professional citation for your work. The things you said, reducing the ego, and letting it all be about them. I offered nothing. Like, I'm not saying that I didn't have money for sources when necessary. But I found that not to get away from spending money, but money was rarely the important thing in their lives. And so that check, that professional individual check that I provide you is just more validation that Robin's work is top notch. It is the thing that I would say, if I'm going to teach someone, and I always talk about we should have mentors in our field, whether it's Army or FBI or whatever, they should have your book to say, teach them this first. Because if you have trust, oh my gosh, you have everything.
Well, I'm going to now bounce it right back to you because, Pete, I just interviewed you for my next project I'm doing, and we'll see where that winds up going. But you really hit upon some really key foundations in there. And, don't, I know you weren't, but, don't diminish yourself, because the circle that we live in, and like all the people that are in our circle of our trust, all the high-level operators, we're all doing exactly the same thing. And you said it so eloquently to me the other day when we're just chatting offline, and that was, you're a lighthouse for people. And one of the things that you're always doing is you're always asking yourself, what value am I providing to someone else? Mm-hmm. That's it, is always thinking in terms of understanding other people's priorities, needs, dreams, and aspirations, and thinking yourself, what can I proactively do to be there for them? Because when you build those trust credits, as you called them, they're always there. And then if you need to have an ask, you can't even finish the ask before someone says yes. You're one of those people in my life. When you come at me, if you have an ask, you don't have to finish. You don't have to tell me what it is. Yeah. It's yes, and I'll figure it out. Because it's proactive solving people's problems in life. And that's how we then create unbreakable alliances, because who doesn't want to be part of your life?
When you do that and you use your trust bank to extend credit, trust, and it gets higher risk if necessary. And risk doesn't have to be danger. It can be financial risk, or it can be relationship, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
That eventually, if you get to the point where we're at in our career, a lot of times people are like, hey, Pete, I want to do this. However, you must extract value, because you always bring value. They know that, and they know that I'm going to put myself into their thing to create and bring value, that they'll now come back to me and say, but you have to get paid. You have to get value out of this. What are you getting out of this? Otherwise, we're not doing it,
Right.
And so then now insisting that I get a return on the value that I create. Does that resonate with you?
100%. So that is a great, healthy relationship, because what it's doing is it's ensuring that the equation is balanced.
Right.
And people that care deeply about valuing the relationship above the thing will always make sure that the equation is balanced. And if it does get out of balance, I tell you, it impacts you. I know it impacts me in anything we do. I mean, it's why, every time, you and I talk, it always ends with, what can I do to be a resource for you in anything?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
anytime you have me on a show, I feel like it's unbalanced because, I'm the one that's benefiting from it. And I never want an unbalanced equation because I want to make sure that you feel the love coming through to you.
I do. And I love chatting with you. It's always inspiring to me. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got to ask Robin to get that recording back so I can hear what I was saying. Because sometimes I'll unlock something in my brain where there's a new stream of thoughts that I haven't ever put together. And I'm like, oh man, that was really good. Whatever it is, it's all in there. It's all recallable, but you inspire me to get to a part of my brain that I don't often get to because I'm thinking about experience. I don't have to talk in code to you because we have a lot of common language and common experience. So the context required for us to talk is not as heavy as it is as when I'm talking to the audience and I say, oh, you have to exchange trust at a high rate. Like you get all that because we've done this work.
Part of someone hit this the other day with me, and it's a key behavior that we bring to this, and that all the people that are operating in this healthy relationship area bring, and that is positive. Because positive people are problem solvers. Positive people have positive energy. We're surrounded by stuff we don't like every day. But it doesn't matter. That's all context. So like, what are you going to do to work through that challenge? Because that's what problem solvers do. They're positive, they're safe, and they're resources for other people. That's it. So when you have that positive attitude, and it's not positive in the sense of I'm a cheerleader, rah, rah, rah. No, positive means we don't speak ill. We work the problem. And we just are constantly thinking in terms of what are we going to do to work through this challenge? I don't see problems, they're challenges. Life is full of challenges. The universe is just being the universe, man. What are you going to do about it? And since we're genetically and biologically designed to work and cooperate with other people, all problems are interpersonal problems, and we just move through it with people. The healthier alliances, more alliances we have, the easier life gets, because then you can maneuver in any direction. And I was just on a show with someone a few minutes ago talking about, actually it was an interesting story about during World War II, a blind girl that was able to, a blind boy that was able to assess who could actually join the French resistance or not and detect deception because they were blind. And what they were able to do is they became so present. They could focus. They were listening and paying attention to other people free of agenda. People are always talking about you just need to be genuine, you need to be organic, you need to be sincere. And people are always wondering how you do this subjective art form of these things that can be very subjective words. It's very, very simple. Here's the action you take if you want to be genuine, you want to be sincere, you want to be organic, as people say. It's simple. Engage a human being, be curious about the life path they're on by asking them simple questions. What was that spark and inspiration all those years ago that inspired you to be the person you are today? And then listen with no agenda. That's it. That's how you do all those things. Because when you can give that beautiful gift of presence to someone else, your brain hits calm. And when you hit calm, you're present. You then can observe everything. So when you're in the combat zone, when you're doing high shit, big shit moments, you can see and observe everything. Because when you can see it free of agenda, what that means is you're eliminating, to the best of our ability, confirmation biases, because confirmation biases are what really will submarine us in most situations.
This is great. There's so many things which always happens with us.
Griffin.
So me and my interpreter, right? And I work with interpreters at a high level because I trust them. It's the first thing. It's like, I need to trust you. You're going to say these words better than me. You're going to understand the culture better. Now, maybe there's some elicitation skill I'm going to bring into this, but I tell them all that ahead of time, even if they're local. I don't care, because I have to be able to work with this person. I'm working the dog shit out of these guys. I'm forcing them to come into American camps and expose themselves to danger. And I'm like, hey, 20-hour days are normal around here, So if I can't trust that person, then we can't have that. The other thing is, a lot of times when I'd go on a patrol, there would be like an E5 infantry dude or whatever, and he would look everywhere else so that I could be as present as possible in that 3-person conversation. Cause I'm trying to work with my interpreter, and I'm trying to have him I'm trying to have him connect with that person. And so I'm not having to look over my shoulder. It took some time, but I had to completely trust. And this time I'm thinking of Stephen Glass, Sergeant Glass would look around, and I would say, I'm going to completely 100% trust you. If you say to do something, I'm going to do it. But let me talk for as long as I can. And if we have to go, we have to go. And we worked great. And there were a bunch of guys like that. They loved it because I let them be important. And I would tell them, man, Sergeant Glass, but you give me that ability to completely focus on this task here. I couldn't be as impactful as I was, as fast as I was, because these are hyper short meetings sometimes, but I'm getting information the commander is desperate to have that doesn't even know that he needs it. So that kind of alliance, even if it's temporary, and I never see these other 2 dudes again that I worked with, but we built a really strong team, able to do incredible things. We're surrounded by other Americans, and I'm getting the highest quality information because I'm completely focused on that person I'm talking to.
It's really interesting. A few words you put in there. Even if it's temporary, no, it's never temporary. Okay. And you know why? And you've already done it. I got my goosebumps going, Pete.
Yeah.
Temporary. So your interaction with them might be a limited time span, but the way in which you're interacting with them and letting them be important was the other thing that you said. That's creating your lighthouse. You become the person and the brand that everyone wants to work with. So even if you don't work with them again, we do this. We don't just think about that round down range without collateral damage. And so same thing, when we're thinking about a relationship, it's just not that one relationship we're having. We're having a relationship with everyone in that person's sphere of influence and everyone from there. I mean, in the world of intelligence, the likelihood of us getting a bit of intelligence from only a few set individuals is slim to none. It's the 1 to 2 degrees of separation that's going to give us the information we need. And you're only going to get those 1 to 2 degrees of separation with great information, and is a great relationship with the one. And so you become the brand with the relationship with everyone. So it's not just the one. You're creating an aura, a presence of Pete is the guy. Mm-hmm. Even though the beacon might be the one that's propagated, you might never see that beacon again, but that rep goes here, 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 and here, and here. And so when that person says, hey, I'm thinking I might want to do something to help out. Hey, I know a guy.
Yeah.
We'll talk to Pete.
Yeah, you're right about that. You're right. It isn't temporary. You're building it as if it's as good as a long-term thing. It's just that time for the 3 of you to be together. And if you constantly plant that seed the same way every time, you get a harvest from that, So if it isn't this relationship, it's the next one or the next one. And then all of a sudden you go back 10 relationships. Oh, there was something there. And so that reaping of the reward of working in this fashion, it's constantly self-perpetuating, but also it's like, hey, by the way, this thing you did a long time ago, you forgot about. You said something important to that person. And all the time, Robin, and you must get this. Someone will say, Pete, you said the most profound thing to me. And I'll be like, oh, I did? And I'm kind of terrified. I'm like, oh no, what did I say? Was it bad advice? Sometimes I give crazy, drunk uncle advice. And they say these things and I'm like, oh, you said this thing to me and it changed how I saw things. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness I was the same person then as I try to be now, even though I'm a more wise person now.
Right.
Same practices.
Yeah, it's congruency of who we are. Again, when people see congruent behavior of who you are and how you act over a period of time, that makes people inspired. I won't say inspires people to feel trustworthy towards you because they know what to expect when engaging with you, which empowers them with knowledge. When people are empowered with knowledge, they have their own situational awareness, which inspires them to feel safe. The greatest motivator, the only real true motivator of all of us is we want to feel safe, secure, and prosperous for ourselves and those we care about in our lives. What are you going to do to inspire someone to feel safe with you? One of the things we do is congruent behavior over time, space.
Yeah, no, it's true. One of the things I was thinking about when I was going through the book, by the way, everybody should get the book, and the link is right below, and it's called Unbreakable Alliances, and it's fantastic. And if you haven't read Code of Trust, go read that. Read all of Robin's books, and you will get a great multi-volume primer on how to deal and talk to people. It's really good. And one of the things I love, and I don't want to get into this yet, but I'm going to come right back to it. In this book, you're building on your own work. but you're also bringing in fantastic other work. You and I are both big fans of Joe Navarro, and I'm not a body language expert, and I think you handle this sort of like me, but I'm looking for congruence in the message that I see. And so if I see hands up, I know like people are excited about something, good, bad, I don't know. But if deception comes from me, or there's something that I have to work on, less deception, when I see incongruent body language with like the mouth, the face, the body, the feet, if I get the person I'm talking to, if I've got their feet off the ground and they're talking about the future, man, that's all the body language I need. I know that's good. So I do want to get into this now. I love all of the resources you brought into the book because I hear things and then I'm like, oh, I haven't read that book. Ooh, curiosity. Okay, let me go read about that. And so you find these other things, which by the way, turn into bookings on my show. And not only do you read the book, but you get to set up relationships with all these people that are in this matrix. I don't mean matrix in a scary way, but like a connection matrix. Sure. All of us who think in this kind of fashion.
Yeah, thanks. One of the things, I had a lot of goals for this book. One was kind of go back to the original writing style I used when I came out with my first book. It's Not All About Me years ago, because that one's, believe it or not, that self-published book was my bestseller still all time.
Wow.
And so I wanted to go back to that original writing style. So I wrote this solo. I didn't have my writer Cam Stouth with me, who I love dearly. He's a great writer, but this was solo. And I also wanted to put together everything I've learned. Again, books are a accumulation of everything you learn. So this is literally extremely current. I finished the writing last year for it. And so the publication process is pretty quick. And the other thing that I learned in the last couple of years was one of the things that's really important with having a book that people enjoy and get a lot out of is that they can get other books out of that book. And so I really went out of my way to ensure that I've taken, over the last 3 or 4 years, I've taken a lot of notes on a lot of great books I read. I probably go through about 4 to 6 a month, kind of depending on their length. And I've taken a lot of notes. And so I infused as much as I could from what I've taken away from other people's books that reinforced these great human behaviors. Joe Navarro being one, Robert Greene and Laws of Human Nature, 48 Laws of Power being another, Ryan Holiday and his work on Stoicism, Robin Sharma, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari and Who Will Cry When You Die are other ones. Simon Sinek's works on leadership. Diane Hamilton, you mentioned curiosity, cracking the curiosity code. Maria Ross on empathy. Extreme. I can't definitely leave out Jocko Willink, Leif Babin, Extreme Leadership and Dichotomy of Leadership. Just to name a few, Joe Navarro, obviously. I use What Everybody Is Saying, Be Exceptional. Jack Schaefer, Like Switch, and The Truth Detector. Also, my colleague in the bureau was Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss, his book on negotiation was fantastic. So yes, I could go on and on.
Yeah. No, it's good. But those resources are in there. So as you go through the Dreeke canon of things, you also have these other resources. And then here's the thing I'm gonna throw at you is it seems now the time is to say, make sure not only you name check a book and a name, but go, look, I'm just using me as an example because I don't know if Joe Navarro has a podcast, but watch Pete's podcast because there's episodes with all these different Intel people and they're going to blow your minds with how they do these things, whatever it is. And forget my podcast. I'm just using that as an example, but that is also part of this work that we do because a book is linear and these kind of conversations have tons of context and we can double back. And so see, this is the reinforcing point and there's some power in that. And I learned, man, I don't watch a lot of podcasts, but the ones I watch, they're so good on teaching me about the thing that I'm trying to learn about.
Yeah, that's why the last chapter in the book is mastery. It's falling in love with the process, and the process requires humility to realize that we're on a journey. Every time I listen to a new book, I'm humbled even more. I feel like the greater idiot that I didn't realize this. I mean, if I could go back in time, and there's 2 things I do different in my life. And they're not like choice differences. It's like how I interact with the world differently. If I could tell my 20-year-old self something, it would have been, instead of trying to make myself look great, I would have spent my time. Awesome. I would have spent my time making the people around me look great. Like, what could I have done to make their life a little bit easier, their job a little bit better, instead of trying to make myself look good? And the other one would be the humility to realize that I just need to keep listening. And I discovered later in life that I'm what's called a kinetic learner. I need to move in order to retain. And so when I discovered Audible and walking at the same time, I was able to really start pouring through books. And when I was able to finally start retaining what I was ingesting, that's when my journey really started beginning. And in honesty, I mean, as we're always learning, but the parabolic curve from learning from others just is profound. It's like you're surrounded by teachers every day, and every day is another great day of learning. And you're right, whether it's through a podcast, whether it's through reading, listening, I don't care what it is. And what happens too is you fall in love with different genres, like lots of human behavior books, evolutionary psychology, all that. But I'm a massive lover of biographies. I love, like right now, I'm finishing up Raoul Amundsen's book, and he is the Swedish, Norwegian explorer that was the first one that made it to the South Pole. Beat Scott down there. He actually was on Antarctica and the Belgica and the Belgian ship. I mean, it was just these old explorers. And I got done reading Cook's on journeys around the world, and then Sir Francis Drake and Queen Elizabeth in the 1500s, the birth of the British Empire. These explorers, they were some massively crazy, amazing people. Anyway, it gives you great context to human behavior under suffering.
I'm going to name check Buddy Levy and his book, Empire of Ice and Stone. And I'll send you a link for that. Oh my gosh, that thing, it's crazy. That thing is, you talk about perseverance, that's off the charts. Like, there's no way that, it's so crazy. With a kitty cat. It's a cat the entire time. I want to go back to the thing I started on a minute ago before I talked about how packed your book is full of things. One of the, and you made me say it in a different way maybe, but I heard you talking about it, but I never heard you like nail it for me and how I see it. So oftentimes we're trying to solve a problem, but we don't know where the work begins. And so we pick a spot and then we go forward from there. You and I both say, hey, hold on a second. Like if my team is in disagreement and we haven't all decided to go in this direction, whatever direction it is, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. There's a lot of ways to screw it up, and they're all the same ways, right? They all, doesn't matter. But if you don't know where the work is and you don't have someone that can lead you and say, hey, you're 2 steps ahead. Let's figure out this next step, because that next step is easy, but we often overlook that. So what are your thoughts on identifying where the work is and using your alliances to do that? Because you're hearing things and like a lot of times I hear, like, I'm trying to make a movie right now, right? And one of the biggest things is we're dealing with phones and not face-to-face communication. And so I'm like, oh man, I've got to go back to trust, because there's something missing in my trust equation that I haven't satisfied. It's all my fault. It's me. I'm the one trying to drive this thing forward, and I'm pushing, and I'm realizing, oh no, I've got to go back. And that's because these paths are critical paths. They're not just paths of least resistance.
Yeah. So there's 2 elements in there, if I heard you right. So you have obviously the relationship and ally building through trust that's going to facilitate everything moving forward. But going back to the problem itself first is sometimes, because it sounded like what you were saying was sometimes we start getting bottled down in the what's in the hows about execution, and that's where the disagreements will happen. Yeah. But if we forget the why, that's when that's what matters most. So you go back and start again at, hey, let's just all agree with what the overall mission is. So for we're making a movie. So for your movie, I'm sure you have an objective and a purpose for that movie. That is the why. So as soon as you start getting out of alignment with your people, with your resources and everything you're managing, slow down, because what we've obviously done is we've digressed on the what's in the house to accomplish the why. Stick with the why, slow down, go back to the why, and then ask yourself, as we're starting to figure out the what's in the house, is this helping or hindering moving the needle from here to there on the why? If it's not, then it's superfluous. If it is, great, then we all align behind that. So it's just really everyone's got, I always assume, because I'm positive, everyone's got greatest intentions, that everyone wants to contribute in a positive way. Yes. We sometimes lose the direction of the why that we're serving. Yeah. I'm going to say this in another way and see if it all evolves how you're thinking about it. Because I just want to do a check on, because I hear what you're saying. So let me try this. So let's say that we're going to go pitch somebody on being an asset for us, right?
and someone is ahead of where they need to be. So when I taught source operations at the CIFSO course, I would see people do the first meeting and they were missing the things you have to do in the first meeting. Yes, they had a meeting, and yes, they got a report out of it. But when you go to pitch this person and I ask you, what color socks does this guy wear on a day-to-day basis? And you haven't got any clue. And that's not a thing that's essential, but how well do you know this person? How much, do you trust this person? And so when you're a senior person looking at a pitch about to happen, they're focused on the pitch. And you're like, hold on, have we done the steps? Is the work completed to be ready? And this is for any kind of sales thing, right? Is this person pre-qualified? Are they ready to make a buying decision? Well, okay, then we aren't on the pitch. We have to go back, because that's where the work is, and make sure that we understand exactly what we need to do or accomplish in this next meeting to see if we're ready for the pitch. And if not, then we still have work to do.
Right. It's also easy. There's so many things that you and I could keep unpacking all this too.
I love it.
Part of what you're saying also was when people get excited or emotionally hijacked, either positive or negatively, tempos can get out of sync. And so when people start jumping too far ahead, the excitement is taking place, and what happens is your tempo gets out of sync and you start pushing tempo. And so not only will you miss things that are important to have a good solid baseline, especially when you start dealing with life or death. When you have a solid baseline takes time. Baseline takes a lot of data points, because when you're going to see a spike out of data, what a spike is of behaviors when something's deviating from a data point of what normal looks like. And when someone gets too excited, they start jumping ahead, because they get excited that, hey, they're on board. We can move to plan B now, or plan C, or three. It's like, hey, slow down, because two things will happen. Is one, you're going to miss the data points. They're going to tell you when something's going sideways. And the other thing too is you could be pushing the tempo of the other person too fast, and you're going to be very off-putting to them. And so you've got two things at jeopardy here. One, your baseline, and two, their tempo.
Yeah. And sticking in this spot, because this is really fertile land, and I hope everybody hears this. Oh my gosh. Yes. So when you're in the field and you're trying to accomplish this thing, and so I'll just use a different Army example, so we're going to go into town, and the civil affairs guys, God bless civil affairs guys, I love all you guys. And you say, we're going to paint the government center, and that's going to bring people closer to the government. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I can't stop the painting. That's going to happen. The boss has said so. But I promise you, I'm going to go ahead of that operation and behind that operation, and I'm going to test, and I'm going to talk to people, and I'm going to see if your premise was accurate. And if it wasn't, now, okay, we did that operation. The next time we go to do something, I'm going to raise my hand and be like, you remember last time we thought this was going to happen? I couldn't find that impact. And the commander's going to love that, because I'm now teaching them. I'm offering them opportunities to tune their machine in a different way. And I don't have to help the commander with that. They'll do that themselves. So that, again, that's identifying where the work is, or where the work was, and how we're going to do the next piece of work. The next time we're going to go pitch a source, you guys remember last time that person ended up amscraying on us. Why? Whatever that answer is, that's a different conversation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you hit it right on the nose there. So when you started talking about painting like the civic building, the government building, and then you're going to do the work behind there to see the impact on that. Because what they're doing is, when someone actually takes an action that they haven't done that you want to do the background on, is they're guessing at a priority of others.
There you go.
And so, my keys of communication, which is the arc throughout this book, is seeking the thoughts and opinions of others instead of pontificating about your own. 2 is talking in terms of the needs, wants, dreams, and aspirations and priorities, friction points and pain points of others instead of your own. 3 is the non-judgmental validation and curiosity. And 4 is the empowerment with choices. And so what this person is doing by painting a civic building without doing any groundwork, getting ground truth, they're guessing at a priority of someone else. You could hit, you could be off. If you're off, all you just did is wasted time and pissed people off. And so before taking an action, if you know what a challenge, a priority, pain point, or friction point of someone else is, and then you offer that resource, now you're going to be in alignment, because now you're actually resonating with the other person. You're making it about them. Because think about this. Now you reverse the optic, do a thought experiment here. The perception of the other person's like the culture that you just built, that buildings that you just painted, right?
Yeah.
If they don't like it, you just offended them.
Yeah.
And and you'll have no idea what the hell you did wrong, because you didn't take time to figure out what it meant to them.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much fertile ground here. So I'm going to go one more time to it because the lessons are huge. So we're going to go out and we're going to talk to people and we're going to want to make them consume the government. We'll say we're in Afghanistan. This is all this. These happen all the time. And when you say this,
language, you just said make them consume the government.
yeah, yeah. But when there isn't a government, right, and you're trying to establish legitimacy, you have to be able to slow down and go, are we connecting these people to their government? And if they're saying no, guess where the work is? It's before you even ask that. How do you create situations? And so we would want to build a thing called a collection center. This is for agricultural benefit for the farmer. Okay, great. And so I always ask the Americans, do you know the market chain from that farmer to wherever that pomegranate gets eaten? No. Well, then why are you fucking with it? Like they make these assumptions. And then we would go, and this is all true. We would decide where we were going to build this collection center. And we would just go and do it and complete forcing will. Now, sometimes you need to do forcing measures, but in this case, if you understood what the farmers needed, how they brought their things to market, and if they had a desire, is that a problem for them? Oh my gosh, just asking, what's the biggest problem for you in bringing your crop to market? And they're never going to be like, oh, I wish I had more workers from another country that came here and helped me pick. Because that's what we believe in Iraq. Oh, if we just get these guys a big bounty, they'll hire, outside people. And so you can talk to them like there's not and I specifically would ask these questions, me going back and in front of the problem. And like, is there a harvest that you couldn't bring in yourself? Like, no, there's no harvest I couldn't bring in myself. I would never hire anybody I didn't know. I'd only hire cousins if I had to hire cousins. And I'm not going to hire cousins because I'm a farmer and I can do it all myself.
Right.
Okay. You give that to the boss and he's hearing, oh, they're going to hire Iranian, pickers to come into town. No, they're not. Not the guys. I'll keep asking. But we're going to keep finding out that these farmers are independent. And the problem that they have, feed and seed. Feed and seed, feed and seed, feed and seed. You give me some free feed and seed? Okay, great. Now we're talking. But we never wanted to hear that. And we never wanted them to go to the government to come together and be like, hey, what are your guys' biggest problems? Oh, there's a rutted road. Oh, there's a this. Oh, there's a that. They're going to have all kinds of complaints you don't have to deal with. But finding those small problems that are actually their day-to-day problems and helping them use their government to knock them down. Man, I'm talking for a lot here, but that was where the work was finding those little wins and just piling together and then measure that and see how that goes on your arc of normalcy.
Yeah, because you took the time to figure out what success looks like from their optic and what you can do to be a resource for their success. That's all about them, not guessing.
So when you try to build alliances within that and you're trying to, look, I can make the commander ally with me, right? But I can't make the staff do that. And they don't always like it because they have all these operations in mind and they're going in this direction. And I'm like, oh, slow down, turn back, and you're going to go right instead, or whatever it's going to be. How do you build alliances in those situations?
Like in any situation, you have to understand what's important to the people that need to give you yes. Then you have to satisfy that importance. And most importantly, all my strategies come down to figuring out what it will take to allow them to feel safe with supporting me.
Yeah.
Because if they don't feel safe in their personal, professional life with giving me yes, they're not going to give me yes. And so in order to allow them to feel safe with that, I need to understand how my actions are going to support what's important to them. And that's I need to frame the context of what I'm presenting to them in terms of that. So it all comes down to, whether recruiting a spy, a battlefield intelligence gatherer, or a loved one in anything. It's like, what can you do to inspire them to feel safe with their choice? That's why I'll go, as I cited this in the book, with Jocko and Leif Babin. I remember there's a great story that Jocko talks about with another battle in Fallujah at some point. And, Leif, who's the platoon commander, Jocko's the detachment commander. And I'm probably slaughtering this for anyone who knows him better than me. But, Leif had put forward his proposal up to headquarters to do this operation. And it came back denied. And it's typical what we do in the military. You bitch, moan, and complain and blame the bosses for saying no. They just don't get it. They don't care, blah, blah, blah. And what Jocko did was really good. He goes, it's your fault, Leif. So what do you mean it's your fault? You didn't do something to get them to feel safe with telling you yes. It's on you for not providing them what they needed to do to feel safe. And so that's why we did it with every recruitment operation. If you got a no, it's either because you didn't solve a challenge, priority, or pain point in their life, and you didn't allow them to feel safe with that choice with you. It's on you.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you have to start with, I'm the producer of the show. If it doesn't go right, it's my fault, right? It may be something that I couldn't control. It still belongs to me, and I've got to deal with it. And if I have something I need to improve, I improve it. And you talked a little bit about this, really kind of throughout the book, the number of times, and it usually was like, we're going to recruit this person. And in one of the cases, the person in your guys' area had been promoted and now has a different vision, different goals, different mindset, because there's a whole different set of problems for them to deal with. And so when they came back with a no, expand on that, because people understand that just because you're part of this set, that doesn't mean that there's not a whole different perspective up here that you have to account for.
It's funny you mention that, because, when I was just describing this last situation, that's exactly the one I was thinking about.
Yeah.
So this was like right before
I read the book.
I know, it's really good. Thanks. And so this happened probably right before I retired or right after. I can't remember the exact timing, but it's like he's just getting ready to retire, right at retirement. And I got called on one of our field offices on one of their counterintelligence operations. And typically when I get called, it's because I was thinking, hey, they're going to ask me about, hey, we just want to kind of bounce this idea of what we're going to do for this recruitment pitch of this source or this, intelligence officer, whatever, off me. And so I was all ready to strategize that. And when they called me, they said, hey, Robin, can you help us with this case? I said, sure. What do we got? And they said, well, here's what the situation is. We had this operation that we put together on our squad, and our team was all coherent. We're all ready to execute. And one of our team members got promoted to headquarters. And we're all excited because, wow, he's going to be the guy overseeing our case from headquarters. So we're all in. We're going to get the yes. We're going to get to go. And all of a sudden, our buddy gets to headquarters, and he tells us no. And we're all pissed off. It's like, Robin, what the hell's going on? Why did he tell us no? I said, oh, that's easy. What do you mean it's easy? I said, well, why do you think he didn't tell you yes? And he goes, because he's an ass. I said, no, that ain't the reason. I said, you start judging the decision. I said, because for some reason, he doesn't feel safe telling you yes. I said, and this is one of the field offices, nice field office to be in. And I said, so tell me this. If this case for you goes sideways, will you still live here? Yes. Will your kids still go to the same school? Yes. Will you still have other cases to work on and be happy where you are right now if this case goes sideways? Yes. I said, okay. So now your buddy's now up at FBI headquarters. And does he want to stay at headquarters, or do you want to move on and go back to the field and be back here, or another field office? And he goes, oh, he probably wants to move on to the field. I said, okay. So if this case goes sideways and he's responsible for it, what's his likelihood of being able to get his next choice selection of where he wants to go? Higher or lower? Probably lower. I said, so in other words, you did something that didn't allow him to feel safe telling you yes for his career. Right or wrong, you don't judge it. It's just probably what's going on in the mindset is most of my times, I told these guys, I said, most of my time I'm strategizing how to inspire management to say yes to your operation. How do you inspire someone to feel safe telling you yes, you can move forward from their optic? And if you don't get yes, because you did not mitigate what was important to them, you didn't take time to figure out what's one of their priorities for them. They're what's going on in their lives. You didn't have their optic. You didn't have their context. Shame on you for not having that information and doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much greatness in that. It's so good. I want to get into mastery, because you wrap the book up on mastery, and people are often so reluctant to declare mastery. I will tell you that if you want to go do field collection operations in an intel world using human as your avenue, you're not going to find anybody better than these people that are peers, but there's not going to be anybody better. I am a master of it. I'm a multi-degree black belt, if you will. I know how to swim. I know how to do whatever thing it is that's hard for a regular person to do, or even a new person to do. I'm already past that point. It's not bragging. It's just the truth. And I don't mind saying it, because I can explain what the path looks like. I can, without knowing the area that I'm in, I can say, this is going to be where we need to slow down. This is where we need to ignore things. This is where we need to go forward. Whatever. I can identify these things. And because I know where the work is, because I've done it enough times and I've learned enough lessons, and I've put that into my own filter. So when I hear myself talking, I'm not pre-thinking my words, but as they're coming out, I know to hear for certain things that I'm even saying that I'm like, oh, that's a mistake. I need to correct that. Emotional things. I'm really big on affect being bigger than effect. The emotional response to stimuli, that's an affect. That's the psychological use of the term. If I'm creating the wrong affect, fear in this case, then I've got to slow down right there in that meeting right now. And I've got to maybe even terminate the meeting, because I've lost control of where the emotions are going. as far as what I can perceive. So that mastery is being able to, one, hear yourself say these things, but also understand like what the future is going to look like, so that when you come upon these snags in the river, you're like, that's a snag, we know that, just move to the left, we'll be all right. And you don't even perceive that you've done anything different, because it is mastery. It's the smoothness that comes from like doing 1,000 of the same kata or whatever it is.
So great masters are the ones that don't call themselves masters, but they know the path. So they see the mastery path, because great masters are the perpetual students. This is a journey, not a destination. And so what happens is, when, as you're describing yourself, when you fall in love with the process and you're able to start, moving as an art and not a paint by number, you're an artist, knowing exactly intuitively where to put the brushstroke in. But all of a sudden, because you're on a mastery path, you're present and calm, because you know how to maneuver and live. But all of a sudden, something spikes your notice, because you know your path so well that you notice when something is new, and you can focus in on that and say, what can I do to bring that in and make it part of this? And so that's what masters do, is they're constantly learning, they're constantly adjusting, they're constantly passing on that to other people that are on the path. And then they also very easily, quickly recognize the skills that they still have yet to learn and bring in and make part of them. And that's when you fall in love with the process. You fall in love with the process of doing, and you fall in love with the process of learning. And that's the mastery path. And so it's getting your reps in. It requires amazing patience. It requires amazing humility, humbling, painful humility, to say, like, every new book, every new conversation, every new podcast is another day of, wow, today is going to be a great day, because I'm going to be humbled again today.
Yeah. Every time I listen to or read a book that I've read before, that Greater Fool thing, and I'm like, man, I missed half this book. There's things that I've picked up and have put to use, and I recognize them right away, but I'm like, why did I read this book so speedily? And so I read fast sometimes, because I need to get through a book to have a conversation with you or whatever it is. But I'm not afraid to go back now, and especially when two books brush up against each other. And so that's that patience, that speed that I have to work at. If I go to a new place to go do collection, I'm not in that business anymore, but let's say I was, I'm not worried about, I'm not going to go straight for the thing. The person I want to find is the person who will be desperate to introduce me to the person I need to know. Because if I go straight, I always say this, the worst way to find the bombs is to run around town going, where are the bombs? Where are the bombs? Like, you don't, that's not what you do, And so I'm trying to find the person that I can build trust with, who will be like, you got to meet Pete. He's the best guy ever, and that takes a different kind of urgency. There's urgency in that I'm going to get out every single day. I'm going to get my reps in. I'm going to make my mistakes. That's the other things. I'm going to make way more mistakes than I realized. It just goes back to reading books. I made mistakes in reading this book. I didn't take in this very important thing. I didn't process this correctly. So I know that I make more mistakes than I realize. And so I just assume that there's mistakes in there. Not that I'm negative, but I'm like, I am crafting something. It's a draft. I'm going to have to come back, and I'm going to have to improve this thing.
Yeah, it's about learning, and learning fast. I mean, the only way you learn is through failure. And the greatest companies, the greatest individuals invest in their own failure. They invest in their own learning process, not failure because I know I'm intentionally going to fail, but just knowing that I'm going to, when I'm doing something new, means I'm innovating. Innovating is the only thing that really solves new problems, because there's no, I always say, there's no standard operating procedure or SOP for chaos. We have standard operating procedures that get you to the embarkation line to get your foot across the start. But very rarely, if ever, does that SOP take you from A to B to C to D right to the end. It'll get you to A to B, and then all chaos happens. And then what do? You have to innovate to solve and work through chaos. There's no SOP for it. And the way you do that is to be present, you be calm, you have relationships, because only relationships solve problems. And so that is what starts working through that. And that itself is a mastery thing. But all those things are going to create humbling moments, because we don't do anything great the first time we ever face it. We start doing a little bit better the second time. But if we fear the start, if we fear failure, we're never going to have a second attempt. We're just going to cower and go away again. But mastery loves the process. And we just do it again and again and again until finally we get a little bit better at it. It's a little more fluid, so we can move on to the next part of that process.
Right. And you add that fluidity and it stacks. So I'm going to meet that person that no one else in that brigade has met because I'm not worried about meeting them. I just know that I will. And I don't even know what the next step is going to be, but all of my steps work towards that. And then all of a sudden I'm talking to the person that nobody else could talk to, and we always have, like, in the intel world, we always have like that shadowy silhouette. Okay, I put a face in that. Just give me some time. I'll find that. Don't ask me about every day, but every day I'm going to get a little closer and I'm going to start populating those shadowy characters for you.
Another great book and a great guy is Alden Mills, retired Navy SEAL, and was with me at the Naval Academy. He was 1 year ahead of me. And I interviewed him, and in his books, he talks about it too. One of his books is Be Unstoppable. And he's got this concept that they do in the Navy SEALs is swim buddies.
Yeah.
And swim buddies, it's just your partner. It's that loving critic in life. And part of what he talks about, which I thought is really, really good, is you choose a swim buddy that's better than you. Surround yourself with people that are good and better than you, because they're constantly going to push you and give you examples on what you could be doing better. And he does it with his own boys. I think he says he's got 5 boys, and all his boys are in sports or in school and everything. And he encourages all his kids to have people that they surround themselves. All their friends are better than they are at something.
Yeah.
Because they're going to not just push you, but they're going to give you examples on ways to do things. They're going to be innovative and a little bit different. So they're going to be helping you move through life in a very productive way.
Yeah. So I can talk with you about influence and elicitation, that kind of thing, because there's a chapter in your book about that, and it's fantastic. Or I can just turn the reins over to you and say, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to ask me? What conversation do you want to have?
Let's touch on that a little bit, because that's a really good aspect. So the chapter you're talking about is the chapter I call Inspire. It's my chapter where I actually go at influence and persuasion. And I say, in our line of work, those are nice words, but where's the focus? There's always going to be someone ahead of us on the mastery path and always someone behind us. We're always somewhere in the middle, right? And influence, persuade, and coercion, convincing, those are all words about us and what I want. The masters on the path are all about inspiration. They're about unlocking it from within someone else. In other words, when you're an amazing battlefield collector and working these challenging problems with human beings, I dare say you're probably not convincing anyone to do anything that they already weren't going to do. You're inspiring them to want to be with you to solve the problems in their life that was important to them. Your job is to allow them to feel safe, that they could unlock that with you. That's what inspiration is. Inspirational people are the ones that unlock what's already within us and feeling safe that they can execute with you. So that's what this is all about. And it's like, how do you be the person that inspires someone to action? How can you inspire them to share the truth with you before they have an opportunity to lie? How can you be the person that inspires them to cooperate against their own country, if that's what it means to be?
Yeah. A lot of what you're talking about for me is I like to say, like, using culture. You used EQ a lot, and I was like, damn it, I want to talk to Robin about CQ, because CQ for me is an ordinate skill, right? Understanding how to leverage culture to your advantage. And so if I can take your East Coast FBI style and accomplish my goal with you, well, then I'm going to let you do your style, because you're comfortable in that, that path. And so when I understand your decision-making process, when I understand your goals, this all goes back to yours and our combined learning on these things. Well, then why do I need my path? If you're going to take me on, pumpkin, rainbow, banana, monkey 7, and we get to the end that I want, who cares about ABC 1, 2, 3? I don't need those. And so that cultural comfort, and you're talking about this with the influence thing, I don't need to be the person that outfoxed anybody. Matter of fact, I can and probably am and probably should be the dumbest person in the room on the given topic. We're talking a bunch of Afghan farmers. I better not act like I know about farming. I might know some things, but I need to hear what it's important to them, because this is where open questions come in, and we can get deep into questioning. But if I'm asking yes, no, or who, what, where, when, why, how questions, I am closing off the conversation in a way that's not healthy for me. But if I say, tell me about your day, tell me about the history of the area, what's your opinion about this, man, now they're going to talk, and then I can just nudge the conversation. I'm not in control of it. I'm riding bareback on a horse and letting the horse guide me, but I know the horse is going to take me where I want to go, because the horse always wants to go back to the corral in the end. So I'm always going to get what I want out of that person. I just don't know what that thing is until I hear it. And then I can stop, slow things down, and then I can work on maybe some elicitation if I need to, or really just clarifying what they're saying.
It's really great when you talk about cultural intelligence. It's a great statement. It's a great phrase. And it goes into what I love talking about, and that is context. And just seeking the context of others. So whether you're talking in terms of cultural intelligence, context, or all these things, is what you're really doing is it's deep, deep active empathy. Seeing life through someone else's optic, their lens, their demographic, their culture, all these things gives you that optic. And, Brene Brown had this great quote in one of her books where she says, it's not just about walking in someone else's shoes, it's taking your shoes off first. And so it's actually literally, and we did this too when we're doing recruitment operations, was I would have the case agent that wants to pitch someone, do your best to know your subject so well. You know what their daily life looks like. You know what a week looks like. I want you to live that person's life to the best of your ability with the same stresses, the same tempo, the same challenges they face every day for at least a week or two, and then have someone walk up to you and use that same line you're about to use on them, use it on you, and see how that feels before you go and execute, because you might really refine this a bit about how that's going to look, taste, and feel from their context or their cultural intelligence.
What color socks do they wear? I don't know. And you haven't done the work. You've got to know this person, right?
So hey, talk about remembering. Last time I was on your podcast, you asked me this question. Beige socks. You said beige socks because you were talking about how to spark a conversation from nothing. And I said, so what's your spark or inspiration to be here today? And you brought up, well, I'm just here to buy a pair of socks. And I said, what color? And you said beige socks. I said, so what was the spark and inspiration for beige socks? So again, this is such an offshoot rabbit hole kind of thing. But remember, being completely present without an agenda means that you're going to remember those little things. So it's funny that you brought up socks again. It triggered my memory for the conversation we had. When was that? Like a year or two ago, or maybe longer?
Yeah.
But I remembered you said beige socks, Pete. So there you go.
Yeah. It's just, it's a lesson that I had learned from, by the way, when you're teaching other people how to do our job and they know how to do the job, it's like your SEAL buddy, we're all iron and we're sharpening ourselves on them. So as much as they're learning from me, man, I'm learning from all of them in all kinds of different ways, so and the example I always use was we were in Tombstone. That's where we did a lot of our training down at Huachuca. And we would get the agent would give me a SDR to run, a surveillance detection on everybody, right? And so I got to walk a pattern that's predetermined by the agent. And so I see the agent sitting across the square, and I'm supposed to go around the backside of this building. And I'm someone in town that is known, right? I'm a notable person. That's my character. And so I see him, and I wave at him, and I walk straight over to him, and I break the route. And he's like, hey, you didn't go around the building. And I'm like, well, I'm known. If I walk around that building after seeing you and I sit with you, what am I going to do about that? And he hadn't thought through that part of his plan. And by the way, who cares? Tombstone's a tiny little town. It's 4 blocks long. And I know everybody. You send me around the back of that building, you may not see me for an hour. I might go start talking to everybody. And now you really have no idea what's going on. And so just taking that and changing his perception of how SDRs might work, and to plan them either in a better way, a different way, or be more flexible. Yeah, the ideal way is this, but that didn't work out this time. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, situational awareness, the ability to flex. And again, the SOP says do this, but the SOP is step 1. Possibly getting step 2 requires you to innovate. Again, Jocko talks about this it might have been in Dichotomy of Leadership. He had one of his platoon commanders that was really struggling going through BUDS, because he was so stuck to the SOP that he was doing dumb things because he just couldn't flex. And so he actually had mentored him and stood right by his side. He's trying to make a decision on the next thing. He got through it, but it's just like that. The SOP says I need to do this. He goes, yeah, but the SOP is your starting point. It's not the full point. And so being able to do that maintains, you need to be present. You need to have the powers of observations. You need to innovate to do the most important thing, is that work the problem to get through to the destination.
Yeah. How often do you make mistakes when you do this stuff? Like you're talking to your kids, your wife, your friends, whatever it is, and you hear yourself and you're like, I know better.
Oh, you'd have to ask them that more than me. I'd say these days, not nearly that often. I'm like everything in life. We're much better for someone else than we are for ourselves. Like I give it. I always say I'm about 95 to 98% good for everyone else in my life. I'm about 50 to 60% for me. That's why I have a loving critic. My wife does it for me. We have our own emotional confirmation biases for ourselves because the destination we're seeking for ourselves. And so we can see things that are a little too optimistic than we often should and things like that. But doing it for others, I'm decent because again, my greatest client of all time are my two kids, and I pour everything I've ever learned in my life into them. I'm their chief of staff, and they choose a destination, and I help them get there. And you do that by being that loving critic, and the only way you can do that is if they trust you to share with you what's going on, that you can be objective and not judge, and then you can ask those questions so they can discover the path on their own.
This is the link to Robin's book. That's the hard copy version, whatever one you're going to get. I've got the Audible one. It's great. And you guys always know what I always say. I too am buddy read with someone and see what you can learn from that. And you've got so much stuff in this episode already with actual practical kind of lessons and everything. So I love what we've covered. I don't want to take too much of your time. I know you got a bunch of these things, but what else do you want to cover in these last couple of minutes?
As I say all the time, the most important thing in the world is support those that are supporting you. So if you're listening, tuning in at anything, Pete puts an awful lot of time and effort, and he puts out amazing content with amazing guests. Like, share, and pass it on to the others so that people can benefit from Pete's beautiful words of wisdom.
What's next for you?
Someone asked me that earlier today too. What's next is living every day to make it to 2068. That's my magic number. That's the year I'm going to hit 100. And so every day I'm living as healthy as I can, doing as much as I can to pass on a little bit of knowledge I get to someone else that can benefit from it, and constantly learning. I just love life and the amazing miracle of being alive. And so what comes next? More of that. I kind of go where the wind takes me and what inspires me. And there you go. I got another book I'm working on. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we will. And I've got a couple ideas for people. We talk about this when we're done, but that might be good for your book. Everybody else, I'll talk to you in a little bit. Let me roll these credits. I'll be right back to you, Rob.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly.